Everyone should know these 10 paintings. I'm Ninashov. Count on your fingers how many of them you know. I promise many interesting things about each of them. Number 10, Pablo Picasso, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. And we'll start with a painting that sparked a real revolution in the art world. Originally, Picasso called the painting Philosophical Brothel, and it remained hidden and unknown to the world for a full 6 years after it was created. Picasso worked on the painting for almost a year, making one change after another, striving to achieve the desired result. At first, the painting featured a man entering the brothel, and it was essentially an ordinary everyday scene in which Picasso himself had participated more than once. But then Picasso removed the man, leaving 5 female figures and turning their gaze toward the viewer. It was this technique that so shocked the public. In those British times, depicting prostitutes was considered vulgar. A naked female body was considered acceptable in some mythical scene, but a naked woman looking at the viewer and offering herself to him was unthinkable and vulgar. While working on the painting, Picasso saw African masks that were on display in Paris. They impressed him so much with their originality that he decided to invent a new visual language, which would later be called Cubism. The last of the changes was replacing the heads of 2 women with those very masks. And this gave the whole scene a grotesque, broken, and even menacing appearance. It is with this painting that Cubism begins. 9th place, The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. This mural by Leonardo da Vinci is located on the back wall of the monastery's refectory in Italy. It depicts the Last Supper, the Last Supper of Christ, during which he made the famous prophecy about Judas's betrayal. It was this very moment and the reaction to these frightening words of the 12 apostles sitting at the table that Leonardo da Vinci tried to capture. Leonardo worked on it for 3 whole years and invented a special technique for it, which, unfortunately, later almost destroyed the painting. Usually, a fresco is painted with colors applied to wet plaster. The paint dries together with the plaster, gradually soaking into its thickness. That is why frescoes are so durable. It's not enough to just destroy the surface layer for them. But Leonardo painted it with egg tempera on dry plaster, and that was a very bad idea. It was always damp in the refectory, and the painting started to deteriorate right during its creation. For 3 whole centuries, people tried to restore it as a fresco, not realizing that it was an entirely new technique, until they almost completely ruined the painting. And only 500 years later, just 50 years ago, technologies appeared that made it possible to restore the painting, and even then, not completely, they replaced the missing areas with colored solution. When Leonardo was working on his painting, the abbot of the monastery kept rushing him. The painter was angered by these words and threatened the abbot that he would use him as the model for Judas if he didn't stop interfering with his work, and calmly finished the painting. 8th place, Hieronymus Bosch, The Garden of Earthly Delights. The Garden of Earthly Delights is perhaps the most famous work of Hieronymus Bosch. This triptych got its name from the sin of lust, or as we call it, fornication, which is depicted in its central part. On the left panel of the triptych, God is depicted presenting Eve to a bewildered Adam, still untouched in paradise. The central part, the most interesting one, depicts for us, by modern standards, an idyllic scene of endless copulation. Naked male and female bodies are shown in various situations. But we should not forget that in the Middle Ages, sex was considered a sinful sign of the fall. Lust was considered a mortal sin, and giving into it without remorse was seen as reprehensible. And as a result of this outrageous fall from grace, we can see on the right side a hellish scene of the torments of those same sinners unfolding before us. If you love to play, you must also love to pay the price, forever. The artist's imagination runs wild in this section of the triptych, filled with bizarre monsters, machines and torture devices. You can look at this painting endlessly. It holds many secrets and interpretations. And I'm preparing a video about this painting, so subscribe, it's going to be interesting. 7th place, Jan van Eyck, Portrait of the Arnolfini Couple. Jan van Eyck's painting is the first double portrait in the history of painting. At that time, it was customary to depict a man and a woman separately, not together, and certainly not holding hands. It is believed that it depicts the merchant Giovanni de Niccolao Arnolfini and his wife in their home in Bruges. The painting is truly mysterious, with dozens of secrets, references, and hints hidden throughout the canvas by the artist. The man is depicted in very expensive yet restrained clothing in the latest fashion of the 15th century. The woman is in a very luxurious green dress, with green being the color of love. The wealth of the nobility at that time was expressed just as it is now, through clothing, only everything was much simpler. Back then there were no brands to show off. But the wealthier a person was, the more fabric he could afford. That's why men tried to wear huge sleeves, cloaks, anything they could, while women made as many folds as possible, wore long sleeves and endless trains. Experts have calculated that the model's dress required at least 35 meters of fabric. The color of the fabric also played a significant role, and green was one of the most expensive. Art historians argue about what is depicted in the painting, but one of the clues hidden in the reflection of the mirror gives us the answer. In it, we see two more figures, and this tells us that we have become witnesses to a betrothal. When the future spouses join hands in the presence of two witnesses, the dog is a symbol of marital fidelity, and the chandelier with only one candle is a symbol of the flame of love. One could talk about this painting endlessly, and I will definitely do that. 6th place, Edvard Munch, The Scream. You must be familiar with this painting, which has become a symbol of human suffering and fear. This painting is iconic for all of Expressionism and is perhaps the most recognizable in the world. Edvard Munch painted it in 1893 after returning to Norway from Paris. There is a legend that the painting depicts a person covering their ears from the terrible screams of animals coming from a slaughterhouse that was located on the opposite bank. Others say that there was a psychiatric hospital nearby and the screams were coming from there. But both theories seem doubtful to me, and I talk about this in my video about the scream. Be sure to check it out. In fact, Munch conceived the Scream as one of the parts of a series of paintings about death and love. Love, despair, and death. And this painting represented despair, and that's exactly what it was originally called. At that time, a volcano was erupting in Europe, and he got the idea for the strange figure from a mummy that was being exhibited in Paris at the time. The combination of the strange figure and the bloody sky seemed to him perfect for depicting the despair of a person whose heart had been broken. However, after the exhibition, one of the critics freely described the painting as an unbearable scream that nature itself lets out. Munch liked this, and he renamed the painting to The Scream as we know it today. 5th place, Sandra Botticelli, The Birth of Venus. The painting by the famous Italian artist was commissioned by one of the Medici. We know this from the oranges, which were a symbol of this influential family. It depicts the birth of the goddess Venus, known as Aphrodite in Greek mythology. It is believed that the painting depicts Simonetta Vespucci. Botticelli recreated her image from memory because she had died 10 years earlier. She is also depicted in his painting Spring. The artist outlived his muse by 34 years, and according to Botticelli's will, he was buried at her feet in the Church of All Saints in Florence. The painting depicts Venus, the goddess of love, floating to the shore of Cyprus. The myth of her birth, as told by Hesiod, was rather bloody. The goddess of love was born from drops of blood of Uranus, who was castrated by his own son Cronus at the request of his loving mother, who was also the wife of the future eunuch. The naked goddess floats toward the shore in a scallop shell, driven by the wind. On the left side of the painting, Zephyr, the west wind, in the embrace of his wife Chloris, blows on the shell, creating a wind filled with flowers. On the shore, a goddess encounters a grace. The work painted by Sandro Botticelli became a symbol of Italian painting of the 15th century and perhaps one of the most famous subjects from Greek mythology. The honorable 4th place goes to Gustav Klimt's The Kiss. Almost everyone knows and loves this painting. Its original hangs in the Belvedere in Vienna. Its subject is one of the most popular in the world. It is used not only for reproductions, but also to decorate bags, t-shirts, and even lawns. At the edge of a flower meadow surrounded by golden dust stand two lovers. They are completely detached from the world, holding each other close. The woman in it has her eyes closed, and we can almost feel the tenderness of their relationship on our skin. They seem to have merged into a single figure, dissolving into each other and spreading a floral fragrance all around. There is a legend that this painting was commissioned from Klimt by a count. He asked Klimt to depict a kiss between himself and his beloved and gave Klimt a medallion with her image. When he saw the final result, he asked why there was no actual kiss in the painting. Klimt replied that he wanted to depict not the kiss itself, but the anticipation of the kiss. The most thrilling and exciting moment. The count liked the answer, and he gave the painting to his fiancée. She was delighted with the painting and immediately agreed to marry him. Later, Klimt admitted that the girl was so beautiful that he himself fell in love with her, and that was why he didn't depict the kiss. He wanted to keep it for himself. At least in his dreams. Write in the comments if you want me to talk about this painting. And ahead of us is the top 3. Number 3 is Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Vincent van Gogh painted this picture in 1889 when he was in a psychiatric clinic after the incident with the cut-off ear. At that time, he lived in Arles, in the south of France, trying to realize the idea of a southern society of progressive artists together with Gauguin. However, as is often the case with artists, they had disagreements which they often resolved with drunken arguments. During one of these arguments, Van Gogh cut off his own ear, wrapped it in paper, and brought it to a brothel where he and Gauguin often spent time. As is evident, artists and brothels like Adam and Eve are interdependent. Van Gogh gave the ear to a maid saying, "Take this, it might come in handy for you." The maid was shocked, and the outraged residents of Arles demanded that the artist be isolated, and he was placed in a psychiatric clinic. However, he was allowed to draw there. He had a small separate studio without windows, and he had to draw from memory. At night, he looked at the stars from the window of his room, and during the day he tried to transfer his memories onto the canvas. The creation of the Starry Night was inevitable, but the form in which he did it, which still amazes us to this day, may have been the result of forced imagination. In the end, Van Gogh rejected the painting, and it remained little known for more than 50 years until it was acquired by the American museum MoMA and put on display. The painting's story is incredible. I discussed it in a video. Make sure to watch it. Second place, Jan Vermeer, Girl with a Pearl Earring. The painting. Girl with a Pearl Earring is one of the most mysterious and famous works by Vermeer. It is often also called the Northern or Dutch Mona Lisa. There is a lot of mystery in this painting because in the 17th century in the Netherlands, girls did not wear turbans. That's why this is not a portrait but a tronie, which means an image of an anonymous model with an unusual facial expression or costume. Such paintings were not created to accurately depict the features of a specific person, but rather to study facial expressions and types. It's kind of like a pre-portrait. The girl with a pearl earring doesn't have a contour on her ear, and there's not even a clasp that would attach to the earlobe. Experts believe that this is an artificial pearl. It's too large to be real. Vermeer captured it with just 2 strokes of white paint. It looks as if it's floating in the air. Vermeer especially loved to depict pearls because capturing their iridescence requires a special skill. That was his brilliance. You can see pearls in 18 out of his 36 paintings, which means in half of them. It used to be thought that the girl had no eyelashes, but recent research has revealed that the eyelashes were originally so fine that over time they simply disappeared. And of course, the undisputed number 1 is Mona Lisa, the second painting by Leonardo da Vinci in our ranking. Since its creation, humanity has been pondering 2 questions. Who is depicted in it, and what is Mona Lisa smiling about? This remarkable painting depicts the face of Lisa Gherardini, the wife of Florentine silk merchant Francesco del Giocondo. But is she really smiling? The thing is, the corner of her mouth in this area is painted in such a way that the shadow from the dimple falls on it. And when we look at the eyes, our peripheral vision perceives this shadow as the continuation of the mouth. And the lips together with the shadow form a smile that isn't actually there. If you look directly at the lips, your perception of the smile changes. And this is the main secret of the painting. It creates the illusion of an elusive smile that disappears when you look closely. Moreover, recent studies have shown that Gioconda isn't even looking at us, although it seems as if she is literally following us with her eyes. An experiment was conducted. The portrait was fragmented and shown to people in parts. And most people agreed that the direction of the eyes is about 15 degrees to the right of the viewer. And these two amazing details are what make up the phenomenon of Da Vinci's masterpiece. With a few clever techniques, he was able to trick our vision, even though it would seem we've already seen all kinds of illusions. And Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre, and I also talk about this in my video. The links I'll leave in the description. So how many of these paintings do you know? Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about art in an interesting and most importantly honest way. This was Nina Chef with you. Goodbye everyone.